Hello everyone, my name is Bo, call me Python Bo. Welcome to another in the series of video tutorials about Python GUI development using the Qt framework. Well, what I just said was kind of a lie. In this tutorial, we're not going to exactly be coding anything or designing anything, but we're going to take a look at something even more exciting. We're actually going to go ahead and see what the steps are involved in building our first application. Now you may be saying something like, well Bo, we've built so many applications in the past, what makes this one different? Well, in the past, the applications that we've been building didn't really have any purpose other than demonstrating a specific Qt or Python capability, something like connecting signals and that kind of stuff. This time we're actually going to build a real world application, and it's going to be awesome. This is going to be a multi-part video, so in this first video I'm going to go ahead and take you guys through the steps involved in building our first application, what are some things that we should really do, and that and etc. And we're also going to learn quite a bit of new Qt classes, so we're not just going to be focusing on whatever we have learned so far, but we're also going to introduce a lot of other cool stuff. Now, I should sort of warn you that building our real application, and especially this one, is going to be a hefty of a task. It's going to take time, it's going to take resources, and it is going to be kind of hard. The classes that we're going to use and the Python syntax that we're going to involve and some modules that we're going to import are actually, some fairly advanced stuff. So if you're a complete Python beginner or a Qt beginner, and if you have watched all the videos in the past that I've made and you get at least most of the stuff, you're not a Python or Qt beginner, you're already in intermediate level. But anyway, like I said, if you're a Python beginner and a Qt beginner, it may be a good idea, to back off a bit and Google some more tutorials about Python or GUI development with Qt. But again, like I said, if you've seen all of my previous videos, you should be perfectly fine. So let's begin. We'll call our applications the PyDataMan, and this will be a Python data manager with a Qt-based GUI. The purpose of this application will be to store user information in a database and display the contents of that database in a table. So, the task is not a huge one, but it is nevertheless something that involves a lot of complex syntax and some computations and some fairly complex code that we'll see in the future videos. This will look and feel like a real application in that it will be based on a QMain window, and it will have all the cool stuff that we've talked about in some few videos earlier, such as the QToolbar, the QActions, the status bar, etc., and all the other stuff. We will implement the ability to add or delete the contents from the database based on the user input. So if a user inputs some text, and we'll see exactly what that's going to be later on, we want to provide the user with a button, somewhere here or somewhere there, whatever, that will add whatever contents the user inputted to a database as well as the table that we're going to be displaying. We will also implement the ability to import or export the database from or to a file. We will see what kind of a file type we're going to use, what module we're going to be using in order to import or export that stuff, how we're going to do it, and all the other cool stuff. This application of ours will have a preferences dialog. In this dialog, the user will be able to change some settings that will enable us to see how the settings dialog can actually interact with a QMain window application or with the rest of the application in general. And we're also going to introduce a cool new class that the Qt has, and I'm not going to disclose what that class is yet. And that makes our lives a lot easier when it comes to saving or reading from the settings. This application will integrate Qt and Python modules. So this will be as much of a Python tutorial as it is going to be a Qt tutorial. As you may imagine, it is kind of impossible to build a Qt-based application in Python without using any of the Python modules. So if you guys see me typing some unrelated to Qt's Python code, I mean, don't be alarmed, it just has to be done, and I'm not just simply going to skip over that part. Anyway, the creation steps that are involved in building our application. The first one, and if you'll recall this from one of the previous videos that I've made, is to sketch the application's GUI. So sketch the application's graphic user interface. I use a pencil and paper for this most of the time. There are some GUI prototyping tool on the web, but I honestly don't like any of them. So I just use pencil and paper, and I believe that most programmers agree with me on this one. Pencil and paper, nothing beats that. Then, the next thing we're going to do is, in step 2, we're going to create the above design, which is, whatever design we sketch right here, in the Qt Designer. Then, later on, we're going to add some basic code in Python. Then we're going to add more code, and we'll complete our application's functionality. Such that the application does what it's actually supposed to do. The next thing is kill the bugs. Quality checking and get rid of the bugs or any errors that come up in your code. And finally, we're going to package the application and create an installer for distribution. And I have to say right away that we are going to package the application in the .exe format, so executable for Windows. I apologize to Linux or Mac OS users, but that's just what most people use, Windows. Let's go through these step by step. So the first step is, like I said, we sketch the application, again, on using pencil or paper, to get the general idea what the application is going to look like. Well, in this case, I haven't really used pencil and paper. I used my phone. And this is what I imagine our application is going to look like. So this is the PyDataMan. This right here is the title bar, so where you have the X, minimize and maximize buttons along with the title. Right here we have the Q actions, so you have file options, all the other stuff. Here we have a toolbar, so we're going to have pretty much all the actions that we have right here, which will be something like import, export, close, all the other stuff. Right here we have the widgets. So this application will have 4 different Q line edits, a button and a Q checkbox right here, and the contents of those line edits will be added to our table, which will have the 4 different columns. This will be of type QTable widget, but we'll talk more about that later on when we come to designing the the application, the Qt Designer. And finally, at the bottom, we'll have the status bar that will inform the user of any task currently in progress or whatever is currently going on with the application. In other words, the application's status. Step 2, we design the application. So we transfer our idea from paper to Qt Designer. You obviously don't have to follow through exactly where place your widgets or your table on the paper. But if it works out better some other way in the Qt Designer, you go ahead and just do it. But generally, do hold on to whatever design you sketched on the paper, obviously, if you like it. Then we choose the icons and we create the resource file. I have already gone over this in one of the previous videos, but we are going to go over it again. This is kind of like I said in the first slide, a rehash of all the other stuff that we learned, plus adding some new stuff. So I am going to go over how to create a resource file if that's what you're worried about. We're going to use the appropriate widgets, and this is very important. Think ahead. So there are several widgets in Qt Designer or in Qt Framework available that are somewhat similar, but they have different kind of uses and purposes. So it is important for you to use the right widgets and to think ahead. If you design a Q push button, you put it right here, and then you want to remember that what we did in the previous video. You want to add an icon and then put the text of the button underneath the icon. Well, you can do it with the Q push button. And suppose that at this moment where you actually added that button, you have a whole lot of code behind that button in that it connects to a bunch of different slots in your application, and removing it would just be horrible. It's still doable. I mean, you can replace it, you can potentially set the same object name, but it's a hassle. So think ahead and use the appropriate widgets. Then we're going to apply the CSS wherever we think is necessary. This is not a must-do step, but we're nevertheless going to do it because it's awesome. Finally, when we're finished and happy with our design, we're going to generate the .py file using the built-in tools such as the PySide UI compiler tool. Now, we add the first code. We'll implement the generated UI code into our very rudimentary Python program. So we're just going to create the Q application or the so-called QPaint interface and have it display whatever design we've created. This is just to make sure and see what the application looks like in real life, because the Qt Designer's preview function sometimes does not really generate the correct preview. And to be frank, the PySide UI compiler tool sometimes doesn't generate the correct code. This has happened to me only once or twice, but it can be very confusing. The one error that I've noticed, for example, is that it doesn't assign object names, or it mixes up object names, so one object has a name that a different object should have, or at least what's in Qt Designer. Very confusing. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. Then we're going to add some core functionality to our application. So we're going to add whatever signals we think we need. Obviously we can add more later on, but if we have that add button, we want to connect that clicked signal to some slot, and some slot is going just to be a method that we're going to write, but we're only going to put pass as the method's code for now, and we'll just do that with every signal and every method that we can think of off the bat, and later on we'll just change the code. Also, we're going to create any classes that we may need. This is going to be a multi-threaded application, so we're definitely going to need another class of type QThread that inherits from the QThread. So yeah, add that class. We may add some more classes that will take care of the settings dialogues, some functions, some class methods, all the other stuff. Then we're going to test the core functionality by having the application perform some basic tasks, such as printing out to the standard output, which is your screen, in most cases at least. So, for example, if we connected the signal to a slot that says, that's a method saying, I don't know, add button clicked, we'll just add some code that says print button add clicked to make sure that the code works. We'll also add the basic task code to our different threading class and test the communication between the GUI class and the threading class using the signal and slot mechanism and see if that works. In step 4, we're going to write more code. So in this step is actually when we're going to add the necessary code for our application to work. So we're beginning to write the real thing. We're beginning to write the code that will make our application do whatever it's supposed to do. This is probably going to be the longest step of them all. Maybe step 3, once we're setting up all the code, will be a long one too, but this is definitely going to be probably the longest one. This is where we're going to add the database queries, reading from the database, and all that other stuff. This is also very important. We need to test along the way, so we need to test as we go. You don't want to change 500 lines of code and then test, and then you see everything is broken to hell and that you never should have done that 10th line of code because it broke everything else. So you made a couple of changes, go ahead and test it. I mean, it doesn't cost you a lot of time, at least most of the times it doesn't, and it can potentially save you a lot of time in the future if you test it as you go. So again, to make myself clear, if you made some change, no matter how small it is, just go ahead and test it. Obviously, if you made a spelling mistake or something, you don't really have to test it just for that, but still. The step 5 is the quality check. Also a very important check. So, we're going to try to think out of the box. We're going to abuse our new application in order to find some bugs. We're going to use some completely unpredictable, do some completely unpredictable things to it and see how it handles it. I mean, what it does. You know, if we are supposed to load, I don't know, CSV file, a comma separated value file, and instead we somehow manage to load a text file, what does our application do in that case? Or if we are loading a CSV file and we have the location of that CSV file displayed, you know, in a QLine edit, and then we change, you know, while in the QLine edit, what will our application do when it attempts to read that path? So think outside of the box, try to abuse it as much as you can. This is why alphas and betas exist. This is why there are many versions of betas and alphas and all the other stuff. The best way to test your application is to distribute it to someone else. You know, give it to someone else. This is going to be a fairly simple application by the standards of a complex application that is out there. So there is not a lot of bug potential, but still. So we're going to use it for some time before we're completely satisfied how it works, and we're going to give it a go and say, okay, this is a good application. We've tested out most of the stuff, but there are going to be bugs, trust me. Finally, we're going to package and distribute our application. So PyDataMan is ready to go, and we'll package it into an executable file. And like I said, I apologize to any Linux or Mac OS users viewing this video, but this is not really a crucial step towards building an application. It's this whole multi-part video is going to be about how to build, you know, how to write some code, real code out of scratch, and so this is, you know, a secondary stuff, but it is nevertheless cool. We'll also create a real installer, and then we're going to put it on the web for download. The real installer, I mean, is we'll have that installation wizard, and we're going to click next and accept some silly terms of conditions, you know, end user license agreement that we put there, pick the path to install to. It is going to be a real application, I'm telling you. With this, we're done with this presentation. It wasn't really complex or anything, at least this presentation was, but get ready, we're going to get into some pretty advanced stuff, but as long as you follow me and as long as you listen to my explanations of what we are doing at that present moment, you should be just fine. I know I said earlier that the beginners shouldn't do it, but if you're brave enough, go ahead and do it. You know, you can always sort of quit after the second video and say, what the hell is this? I don't understand anything here, and then go back a few videos, redo some of this stuff and all the other cool things. Okay, well, thanks again for watching. So expect the first build your application video pretty soon, and I hope we'll enjoy this ride together.